All right.
Hey, wonderful. So, we're going to start with a quick introduction. My name is Stani Dimitrova. I am a life and career coach, and I've been working as such for since the pandemic, really. But I've been passionate about personal growth since I was 10 years old, really. I'm so happy to be helping people to achieve the life and career they want and to find more happiness. So, I'm really glad to meet you all here today. I'm also a violinist and concertizing violinist. I have my own chamber music company, so I'm also musicians as well. So, yeah.
Amazing. And my name is Patrick Fulton. I'm a life and leadership coach. I work with a really wide variety of clients. So I work with business owners and entrepreneurs. I work with leaders in the corporate world and individuals that are working to achieve goals in their own lives as well. My day job is actually in corporate HR. I work for one of the 5 largest medical labs in the United States here in Salt Lake City. And I've actually built a program there internally for coaching with all of our leaders. Getting to coach all these different individuals is a huge passion of mine. I'm just so honored to be a part of the incredible success that my clients have had over these last few years. This is a really rewarding piece. So we're excited to be here today together. I'm so excited to be working with Stani, who is incredible, who has a concert tonight, whose birthday was yesterday, to offer this workshop to you. So just to give you a little bit of a lead in as to why we're here today. So we all have goals that we're aiming to hit in our lives. And these are all different kinds of goals. There are personal, there are professional, there are fitness, there are career, whatever those might be. You yourself have a set of goals. I would venture to guess that the folks who have joined us here today have a lot of goals that they set for themselves. Now, something really common that we notice time and time again is that we're about a third of the way into the year. And this is the point at which folks typically start to notice that their New Year's resolutions have maybe started to slide a little bit. Maybe they're not making the progress that they wanted to, or maybe they haven't started at all. And that's totally okay. That is totally normal. It's a cycle that we see time and time again. It's a cycle that I can speak for myself. I experience all the time when I'm setting these goals. And a lot of us just fall prey to common pitfalls. They can be things like overwhelm, maybe overcommitment, shifting needs, or changes in our lives generally. Feelings of defeat can also keep us really stuck. Once we get going and we maybe hit one of those roadblocks, it can keep us stuck or it can make us abandon those goals altogether. So the goal today for us is to create that formula for success for everybody here so that the goals you're walking into this year with, you're going to be able to hit on the timeline that's most meaningful for you. The first thing to know is that it is still possible. It is still possible to hit these goals. You have not lost track to the point where it can't happen this year. We're going to show you how. And I also want to commend everybody for being here, first and foremost, for showing up. That is dedication first and foremost to your goals. It's early on a Saturday. We recognize that. And you're making space in your world to dedicate to taking action and figuring out the things that you want to do. So that's a big win right up front for everybody here and everybody that's listening to this recording after the fact. So I just want to, acknowledge that right up front. So what we're going to be doing today with our goals, first, we're going to identify the what of our goals. What is it that we're actively trying to achieve? Getting really clear about those goals and knowing how they're going to look and feel when we bring them into our lives. From there, we're going to tap into the why. What makes this goal actually meaningful for you? Why are you putting in all of this effort? And what does achieving it bring into your world? Who's this goal serving for you, for your family, for your friends, etc.? What's the purpose behind it? Next, we're going to determine how you're going to do it. So we're going to get into the nuts and bolts here. We're going to take that big goal and show you how to break it down into smaller chunks. We're going to ask, what do you have space and time for in your world? How are you going to take that big thing and make it into bite-sized pieces? And what are you saying yes to and no to make this goal happen? Finally, we'll talk about creating accountability and support around that goal too. I think we can all acknowledge if it were really easy to do this by willpower alone, we'd already be there and we wouldn't be on this call today. And that's totally normal. So we're going to talk about creating structures and support for success around that goal and knowing what kinds of accountability are out there and what you're going to respond to best in your personal world. So that's a little bit of a framing of what we're going to be doing today. So what you're going to need for today, though, because this is an active participation event, first and foremost, paper, pen, or if you want to type on the computer, whatever you need to do, you're going to be writing things down. We're going to walk you through a series of exercises, and writing them down is the best way to do it. Doing it in your head does not stick the same way. but you can type it however that works best for you. Like I said, we're recording this so we can send it to you, our participants, and anybody watching this video after the fact. You are welcome to interact during the presentation too. So we're going to be going for about 2 hours is roughly what we've set time for today. Walk you through the exercise. We'll have a Q&A at the end. So if you have specific questions, we can explore that together. We're going to be guiding you through those exercises to distill your goals. So it's really important that you participate. Please, please, please write things down. We're going to be sharing from our experiences too. Stani and I went through these exercises together a couple of weeks ago. And I can tell you they were actually really helpful and clarifying for me too. So I feel really good about this. I feel really good about walking you through these. One other thing we want to acknowledge up front is everybody's goals are going to be different here today. So somebody might have a fitness goal. Somebody might have a career goal. They might be building a business. Everybody's goal is going to be a little bit different. So we're talking down the middle in terms of general structure, but you're likely to have questions. First of all, know that your goal is valid, whatever you're walking in here today with. We want this to be a conversation with you. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Please feel free to raise a hand, unmute your mic. We'll call on you, whatever it is. We want to help you get really clear on these goals, but we'll save some time at the end if you want to like deep dive into anything in particular. So I'm going to pass it off to Stani now to get us started with everything. Take it away, Stani.
Absolutely. So we've already introduced ourselves. Just want to make sure, can everyone hear me well? Patrick, right? Good. Okay. So just we wanted to hear from you. I wanted to get to know you guys. So let's do a round where everyone gets to share their name, where you're tuning in from, and intention that you want to set for today. Leaving today's workshop, how do you want to feel? What do you want to be different? Do you want more clarity? Do you want to be more excited about your goal? Do you want to have more determination, or just anything that's coming up? How would you want to leave this workshop today? So let's see. So we'll start with the people that are with video on. If you are, you can turn on your video if it's off if you would like to join in for the round. So should we start with Terry? If you're ready, yes. Terry, so if you'd like, you can share your name, location, and your intention for today. Let's see. I have a hard time hearing you. Oh,
my sound is having problems.
I think we're good now. Now
So
we're here.
I can't hear you right now, so I'm going to recharge my Bluetooth and maybe come in later. So I mean, I'm Terry Turner and I'm from Kansas City.
Thanks, Terry.
Terrific. Thank you.
We'll see you back in a second.
Who'd like to share next? Raise your hand. Name, where you're from, your intention for today. Yes. Yeah. Gandhi?
My name is Gandhi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
And I live in Salt Lake, and my intention is to not feel so overwhelmed.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for joining.
If you'd like to go next.
I will. Yeah. My name is Glenn. I'm from Salt Lake, Utah, and my intention would be to have a little bit of clarity or kind of like direction that to guide myself into.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And if you'd like to go next, you can just raise your hand. Yes, Jean.
My name's Jeannie, and I'm calling in from Pennsylvania. And my intention for today is to just get a little bit of a push to move towards my goal, because I've been finding the past couple of years, a lot of things I'm using as excuses to not move forward. So it's been really easy to, oh, I'll do that later, but I need a little push, a little direction. And that's what I'm hoping to get out of today.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Great. Would like to go next? Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm tuning in from New York, and my intention is to gain clarity on better accountability systems I could be using around my goals.
Beautiful.
Thanks for sharing. And Lizzie? Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name's Lizzie. I'm calling in from Detroit, Michigan. And I guess my intention is probably the same as what everyone has said, really. But I think the thing that I've been struggling with is not just like getting started, but then, yeah, figuring out like the system that works for me, because I often, even if I start something, I have trouble like continuing it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Great, wonderful. And Terry, feel free to share later if no, or great. So great to meet you all and really honored to be in your presence today here. So we're gonna start with a exercise. So if you have your notebook or paper and pen, you're gonna get to use them now, so you can get those handy. So we're gonna do a goal brain dump. So a lot of you come in with a clear goal, but this is a time to kind of dump all the goals that you've had that are unfinished, things that you want in all areas of your life, personal, relationships, career, anything that comes to mind. If you want, you can put them in categories, or just you can just dump them just in one sheet of paper. Just really let all the goals that you've been planning on and just write them down. So we're going to take about 3 minutes to do that. So you can get started with writing. And when you all look up, we'll assume you're all done. So I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock. And in the meantime, if you have questions or anything, feel free to put those in the chat. Okay, a minute or so.
And just to echo what Stani said earlier, big, small, any goal totally fits the bill. If that is detail your car, if that is do a split, whatever it is, it can be on there.
Okay. About 30 seconds. Okay. Okay, we're just about done. Samba just joined us. Okay. Okay, Samba, so in the chat, I've put what we're just finished doing. Welcome. Great. So I want you guys to look at that list and kind of see how many goals you wrote down. Kind of look at the number. You can put it in the chat. It will be fun to see, like, as like 20, whatever the ballpark is. You can write it down in the chat if you want to share. And the next step is to, from looking and kind of looking through those goals, to narrow down 12. Glenn, nice. 12. Oh, that wasn't popular. Nice. Great. So there, it's so helpful sometimes for us to do this often, actually, to dump everything that's in our head into a piece of paper. It can open up so much brain space because we tend to hold so many thoughts and to-dos and things. So we're just, that's something you can do often by yourself. But from here, we're going to take it to the next level. So 13, great. So from here, narrow down the list to the 3 most important goals to you. So now you'll really have to prioritize and see, of all these things that seem important at first, what are the things that are truly important to you if you had to narrow down to 3? So we're going to take another 2 minutes. Let's narrow down it to 3 top goals. What are the 3 goals that would make a significant impact in your life or career or relationships? So let's go for another 2 minutes on the clock.
So Gandhi, to your question, you asked, are we ranking those by urgency, as in when due, or importance, as in the ones we want most? So yeah, this would be, if you could only get 3 of those goals done, what would be the top 3 that you would pick? You can have only 3 from the list. This is where it got really hard for me, because I had a list like you. I think I had 20 plus on mine. And if you only got to have 3 of them, what would those 3 be? So I had to like circle the ones that stood out to me, go with your gut. Some people like to do this by elimination, crossing things out where you're like, yeah, I can pass on that, pass on this. I struggled here personally, just to share with y'all.
But I like what Patrick's saying. Like, it's best might be to go with your gut, with the first initial reaction. What seems most compelling to keep. Great, 20 seconds. Seems like. Okay, great. So you can look at those 3 goals. Now we're going to take it to the next level yet again. And from these 3 goals, if you had to pick the one goal that is most important to you, that would make the biggest impact in your life, the goal that would really move the needle a little bit forward in what's most important, that what feels most important for you. Maybe right now work feels most important, maybe your health, maybe your relationships. We always all these things are things that we balance all the time. So maybe you're in a time of your life where one thing is more important than others. So kind of getting clear on that is crucial. So write down of those 3, what is the one top goal you'd like to prioritize right now?
One of the ways to think about this is that your goals often connect to each other. One goal may create more capacity for another goal. One goal may enable you to do the other goals more easy. What's kind of that linchpin goal? If I did this, it's going to broaden out my possibilities. It's going to create more capacity, more income, more flexibility, whatever you need to achieve those other goals. There's usually one that's kind of the root.
Okay, if you're ready, just look up and you'll know you're done. Okay. And for those of you who are done, you can share in the chat, or if you want, you can just raise your hand to share, whichever is easier. I want to start hearing from you. What was this process like? What was going on the inside as you had to narrow down the goals? What felt challenging? And did anything feel exciting? Did it feel liberating? I'll be curious to hear whether you want to write it down in the chat. If you want to share, raise your hand. You can unmute. If anything came up. And also, we'd love to hear the one goal you picked, if you are willing to share, but you don't have to.
So I found that a lot of the goals kind of grouped into other goals. So like I had maybe 4 like main categories. And then my top goal, it was really hard to decide between 2 of them, but I picked medical stuff. So I think that would, if I get some medical stuff figured out, I think that would give me more energy and give me more time, and I'd be able to work more, and you know, just a lot of the other things would be easier, I guess.
Love that. Thanks for sharing that, Gandhi. That's exactly what we were saying about one thing tying into others. So yeah, great example. And it's a difficult exercise for sure.
Yes. Thank you. And Elizabeth is sharing in the chat. The perfectionist in me found it so hard to narrow the goals down. Absolutely can relate. And she find it helpful to tune into your gut instinct. Samba has a relationship goal. Wonderful.
Love that.
Great. If anyone else wants to share, just raise your hand. If not, we're going to move on.
Lizzie with a career-based goal. Awesome. So we've got some really good variety in here, y'all. This is great. As we're going through these next steps, definitely like let us know if you need some clarity for your particular goal. We're happy to deviate and help out there.
Absolutely. And from here, we're going to kind of zoom into really the fuel behind our goals, and that's our why. You might have heard the famous Simon Sinek, Start With Your Why, the book, and the YouTube, the TED Talk. You might have heard it, but it's, I love that he tunes us to something we all kind of feel. When you have a strong reason to do something, it's the biggest fuel why you do it, and you do it better than anything, as long as you're clear on why you're doing it, why it's important. And that's a lot of what we're doing today, is both being clear on why something is important and what drives you. So I want us to think about just that. Why do you want to get that one goal achieved? What is motivating you? That's something that you can write down, jot down. And also, what would the full transformation look like? If you were to achieve that goal, who would you be? Sorry about the pings. I'm not sure, I can't turn this off. So let's say you've achieved that goal. And what will it look like for you to have achieved it? What's going to be the impact? Kind of mentioned health, career, relationships. But what would be the impact on you? How will you be different? You can jot down a little bit. And if you were to think a year from today, April 16th, 2023, if you had achieved your goal, kind of thinking what your life would look like, how would you feel with yourself differently? How would you carry yourself? How would you show up with the people around you differently? And how will other areas of your life be impacted by that one goal that you've set? Kind of, you can jot down a little bit about that. And from a scale of 1 to 10, how exciting would it be to achieve this goal? Is it a 10? If it's not a 10, what would a 10 look like? Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to really zoom in. And actually, would anyone like to share? Did anyone not find their goal exciting? What is the excitement level when you checked in with your goal? Would anyone like to share what came up as you're kind of looking ahead in the year? How are you expecting to feel once you achieve your goal? Anything that's coming up? You can write quickly in the chat or share.
Sometimes the zoom in is very clarifying. If you're somebody who played that scenario out a little bit and we're like, oh, okay, yeah, like, you know, if it doesn't if it doesn't hit high on the mark, that's okay. That's why you have a whole list of other goals. It's time to go back. So if you're that person, you don't have to say it, but you have options.
Absolutely. And again, sorry about the pings. I can't figure it out for right now. But anyway, so what we're going to do, kind of based on what we experienced, just kind of thinking in the year ahead, we're actually going to kind of really travel in a way a year ahead. We're going to do a little visualization, and that's something you guys have done before, something you're used to doing. But so we're going to do a visualization where we go a year from now, we kind of go through a day and kind of check in if you have achieved this goal in a year, how are you going to feel? And really, that's going to give you more clarity, and maybe you'll notice things that you didn't expect. So Terry shares, I didn't rate the exciting high, but that's not what you're looking for. Okay. That's great. Yeah, it doesn't have to be exciting. That's not something you're looking for.
Ooh, I love that, Terry. Yeah, a good shift of those words to make that fit for you.
Nice. Wonderful. Beautiful. Great. So I invite you all to kind of sit comfortably in your seat, really feel wherever you're sitting, kind of really feel the weight of your body into the chair, sofa, wherever you are. Really feel your weight coming down, and close your eyes. Take a deep breath through your nose and exhale. One more breath through the nose, even deeper, and powerful exhale. Feel your shoulders melt. Relax your jaw. Feel the heaviness of your eyelids closing down. I'm going to take one more breath. Try to breathe from deep within your belly. As you breathe in, you fill up your entire body with air. Let's try one last breath. And beautiful, powerful exhale, letting go of any tension. And now we are in April 16th, 2023, a year from today. You've achieved your most important goal. You're waking up. It's the beginning of your day. How are you feeling? What is the feeling of having achieved that goal? When you wake up, how do you feel in your body? How is the day ahead looking like for you? What is it? What are some emotions that are coming up as you think about the day ahead? What are some things you have scheduled, planned? Feel free to notice the space you're in. Is it the same space where you live now? Is it a different space? Notice the light, the colors, the textures. Is it small, big, different? Maybe you're in a different place completely. Walk around that space. Notice how you're feeling. Again, tune in with yourself. What are some emotions that are coming up as you think about the day ahead? As you fast forward through the day, what are some things you're excited about? Some things that really charge you, motivate you to get through the day? As you fast forward through the day, how are you showing up in your interactions with people, with colleagues, with friends, loved ones, children? Again, check in. How having achieved that one goal has made an impact in your life this day? Notice any thoughts that are coming in, sensations in your body. I'm going to spend a few more seconds looking around that space. Now, we're at the end of that day, April 16th, 2023. Sitting on your bed, right before you're about to fall asleep. You're reflecting on the day. You're thinking, what made that day great for you? What made it impactful, meaningful for you? And how having achieved that one goal that you set a year ago has made an impact on your life for the better? How is your life more on your own terms? How is your life more the way you wanted it? And as you're sitting in your bed ready to go back to sleep, take a few more seconds to reflect. More deep breaths. When you're ready, you can slowly come back into the present moment. Open your eyes when you're ready. And if you need a few seconds more, you can take those seconds. When you're ready, you can come back. Okay. Curious to see, you can stay with that feeling. I'm curious to see what came up for people. What didn't come up? Did something surprise you? Did a feeling or thought that came up surprise you? You can either share in the chat. If it's easier, you can just unmute. What was this experience like for you guys? You can raise your hand. Okay, some was sharing. Try to be realistic. I see that happens. We try to be rational. We'll try to. Sometimes we're afraid to imagine too much. We're thinking, oh, that might not be realistic, or okay. And it's so helpful to be aware of our own thoughts and how we sometimes can get in the way.
One thing that I think is also worth reflecting on is the comparison of that versus your day-to-day. Like we place this in a waking and going to bed framework because that's how we experience our days already. How does that feeling that you tapped into differ from what your normal day is? That can sometimes show you where that bridge is coming from in that sense.
Did anything surprise you? Was something different? And again, we invite you to share.
I'll actually share for myself on this one, Stani, because this surprised the heck out of me when we did this exercise. And honestly, when I did it again just now with y'all, I woke up in exactly the same place that I wake up every day. But the big thing for me that was a shift was not my like physical surroundings, but just the feeling, the schedule that I had ahead of me, which felt a lot closer than I thought it might actually.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Terrific. And if you want to share this again in the chat, or you can just unmute, I would love to hear how that was different. And if not, we can just continue with kind of narrowing down. And now that we've decided on one goal that's most important, we're going to kind of break it down into actionable steps and how that goal will be achieved. And again, that's a lot of the work will be on your own, but we're kind of creating the scaffolding, and that's going to help support you on the way. And when you achieve any goal, when you have a goal, that means that you're kind of getting out of your comfort zone. You're stretching out of what's easy, what's comfortable, and you're always growing by kind of setting up a goal and going to achieve it. That inevitably makes you grow in any area of your life. And it's almost like, that's why I like the analogy of the staircase. And often when you look up at a big staircase that's going to bring you to next level, you look at it and it seems overwhelming at first. It seems like, how could I get so far? How could I get this high up? How could I get to just because, but the great thing is you never have to do it with one step. You never have to jump from the first to the last step of the staircase, right? We always go up a staircase one step at a time. And this is why so many people find their goals overwhelming and usually give up on them. Usually it's because of that overwhelm, because it seems so impossible to achieve something. Because of course we are genetically, we are created to want to grow, to get out of our comfort zone, to reach new, to have new achievements, whether it's and to challenge ourselves and go past those. And of course that normal resistance will come in, but kind of what helps us to reframe it is really thinking of the little steps that we can take to make it happen. And when we see it that way, everything seems so much more easy, so much more actionable and doable. And that's when we help ourselves keep going. We don't give up as easy. And so we're going to start helping you with your goal of thinking first, what would be the end date of your goal? If you were to take that one goal that seemed most important, what would be the end date? When would you like to have that achieved by? And you can write that down for yourself. It's going to be a nice little visual. Could it be your next birthday? Could be the end of the calendar year, or 365 days from today. Or maybe even farther down. And just write that down so it's clear for you. And then it's important to kind of start thinking of what are the metrics of that goal. If you were to break it down into little steps, what is the thing that you're going to see change in that's going to show you that you're moving forward with that goal? Seeing progress is so important for us as human beings to kind of validate that what we want is achievable. Because as anything, if we don't see progress for long enough, it's so easy to give up. But so if you, what is the metric? What is the thing you want to see changing to know that you are moving forward? So kind of breaking down the little. How are you going to measure your success, pretty much? Like, I know Patrick was telling me about his split. He's
I was
learning
gonna
to do a
say,
split.
can I share about this?
Yeah,
Sometimes your metric is very easy. One of my goals this year was to be able to do a front split, and that is measurable with a ruler. So sometimes it's very easy to see where you're making progress with things. Sometimes it's a little bit harder. Sometimes it can be a little bit abstract, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be so easily quantifiable. If anybody needs help, let us know.
yes. And this is also a space for you guys to brainstorm your goals. If there's something like, here's my goal, what do you think my metric should be? Or like again, this is a space for to have support and run things by as we go. I see you guys writing down. As you're thinking about the metrics, now we have an end date for the goal. It's another thing that's important to kind of keep us going, keep us consistent, and help us see little improvements and keep our motivation and drive behind a goal. It's crucial that we also put little goalposts throughout that trajectory of the goal. So if you have the end date, what would be the midpoint of that goal? So pretty much halfway through that goal. Put that date if you like, and we have a cool little tool we can use. Patrick, do you have that handy? Let's see.
Sorry, I muted myself. I have it right here.
Okay.
I'll drop it in the chat.
Cool. So if you want to.
If you have a specific date, this tool helps you plan the in-betweens. So it'll tell you what the day is between those two dates. Isn't the internet marvelous? So what are you going to do? You're going to put little goalposts throughout. So find the midpoint. Or maybe if, depending on your goal, maybe the midpoint is not really like halfway through. Maybe you're dividing time differently. Maybe you know that you're going to be half time away where you're not able to work towards that goal. That's time that you don't want to count in. Anyway, you want to think of that midpoint, you can put that in. And after that, let's think of what's the midpoint between the midpoint of your goal and today's date. So pretty much a quarter in. So if you have the date, so you have a quarter in, midpoint, and what's the midpoint between the midpoint of your goal and the end date? So that third quarter in. And again, just write those dates, and you can even make like a little timeline with today's date and then the end goal, and then just the 3 quarters in. One thing that comes to mind as y'all are doing this, depending on what your goal is, there might be sub goals or sub pieces within that too. You can do the same exercise for each of those smaller pieces. Like maybe a portion is doing research and the endpoint is making a decision. You can structure the same thing within there. Like what's the halfway? What are the quarters? What am I doing from here to there, basically?
How do you guys feel? Do you feel more or less done with writing down the dates and kind of having clarity on the trajectory of the goal in terms of how it's going to take place in time? So from here, do you think, Patrick, do you think people need more time? Not sure.
I was just going to ask, is anybody
Okay.
stuck? Sometimes this part, when you try to like calendar something out, takes the abstract and makes it irritating. So if that's if that's you, that's okay. Is anybody stuck? You can post in the chat. You can raise a hand. Would love to hear where you are. I see diligent writing, and that's exciting. Yeah, why don't we go forward? Y'all keep working. We're gonna tie in. Oh, Samba in the chat posted. I would like advice on how to better factor in obstacles, slowing the goal date and their opposites, helplines, accelerating the goal date. Ooh, that's a great question, Samba. I think we're gonna hit on that.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a
And
perfect
yes, and
cue in.
if we don't answer this question, you can ask towards the end. But I think
Yeah.
we're going to refer to a lot of these techniques. And yeah, just before we transition to the next idea, something, and actually probably 80% of people don't achieve their goals because they never make them visual. They never put them the one place where they check in every day, which is your calendar. So what I wanted to do today is really take your calendar, whether it's your iCal, whether it's your phone, whether it's a book, to really put those dates in. Because those dates, again, we said the biggest shift happens with achieving our goals is when we prioritize, when we put ourselves, when we know what's important, we put ourselves and our goals first. Because things come in all the time from work, from other people, but really putting this in our schedule honors that appointment with you, that appointment of the important things that you want to achieve. So by putting it in your schedule, you're really committing on a whole new level to that goal. So I'm going to give you a minute or so to put those dates in that you wrote down to mark the trajectory of your goal, and put them in your calendar as an appointment with you.
This is another one of those things that when we suggest doing it, we really mean do it. Like not just thinking about these things, but writing them down is huge. Actually putting it in the calendar is huge. So if you want to do it later, that's okay, but make sure that you do it.
And scientifically, it's proven once you write down the goal, helps. Once you put it in the schedule, helps like that much more. And it's simple things we don't notice because, again, we're all too busy. We have too many things. Somebody starts talking to you, you forgot. You said, oh yeah, I was going to do that next week. Didn't happen. Again, this is so huge and why so many people fall off the wagon for their goal, towards their goal. Okay, I hope this is helpful. I hope you guys are finding this helpful. And if you're good, we're going to transition to Patrick.
Awesome. So thanks, Stani. So just to sort of recap where we've been, we took our giant list of goals, we distilled that down. If we could only have one goal, we picked one goal up to this point. We have narrowed down why the heck we're doing that goal, which is so important to have a tie-in, to have that motivation, to have that why behind it. Now we're getting into the nuts and bolts of breaking that down. So we've got our milestones and we've started to think about what our metric is going to be. How do we know we're actually getting there? So now we're going to dive in a little bit more on that front. We're going to take those goals and make them really actionable. So we're putting the success into your hands. So let's look at that first quarter that we've written down. What needs to happen between now and that first milestone? And there might be a lot. That first milestone might still be pretty big. Make sure that you're really clear. We figured out what the halfway point, what's the halfway to the halfway look like? So for me, if I'm doing a split and I'm 24 inches off the ground, hypothetically, not that I've measured, the quarter point would be 6 inches lower. Let's be really clear about what that quarter looks like. Then we want to figure out what's the time blocks that we're looking at. How are we actually going to measure that? What time block is going to feel good for you with your goals? So for me, if I'm measuring from here to my first quarter, I'm somebody who really likes a day. A day is a very simple, very human time block. What can I do every day that's going to get me to that goal. So this could be different though. It may be 2 days, it might be less than a day. That's a little intense for me. I wouldn't go longer than a week out of personal advice. Sometimes things get a little out of focus if we zoom out too much, but figure out what your time block measurement is going to be. You want enough structure, but not too much. Overstructuring can create that overwhelm that we talked about. But the goal is being able to track your goal on a regular basis. Again, how do you know you're making progress? What's the time block we're measuring in? So we want to take that big goal and make it manageable and take the overwhelm out. You've heard the phrase, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. So we're trying to figure out what that bite is. So the question now for you with this exercise is, what is the simplest and smallest action you can take within each time block that you've decided to make progress toward your goal? So to make progress toward that first milestone, if you chose a day as a time block, what is the smallest thing you can do every single day that will contribute to that goal being achieved? And I mean really small and really simple. You want this to be something that you can definitely do. You want it to be possible on your absolute best day, when you are most in the zone, when you have the most time, when you are the most relaxed. You also want it to be something that you can do on your absolute most hectic day. When everything has been a chaotic nightmare, as it sometimes is, you want to still make this goal something that you can do in there. You don't want to put it so far out of your reach that you can only achieve it when you're glowing, most enlightened self during the day. We don't always hit that every day. That's legit. That's about a third cup of coffee in for me, and we're only on 2, so I wouldn't be able to do it at this point. So think about that just a little bit. Sometimes I talk ahead of myself on my own outline. We also want it to be something that we can really track doing. Sometimes having it to be too abstract is a little bit hard. So like, we'll use my split goal again as an example here. I can track if I say my simplest action I can take every day is 5 minutes of stretching. 5 minutes might even be ambitious. Like if I don't stretch at all, 5 minutes might still be like, I don't know when I'm going to build that in. I'm going to forget about it. So maybe it's just literally a minute. Maybe it's doing 5 forward folds when I get out of bed is where my success metric starts. We want it to be something very straightforward, very simple, very bite-sized. And you can change this over time as you're leaning into your goal.
Curious if anyone wants to share in the chat. I'd love to hear, because we're getting creative. Sometimes that's not something you would know off the top of your head. Like you're really getting creative and breaking down the goal helps you think about it differently. Thinking, what is that smallest step that's easy, that's actionable?
Yeah, I would love to hear if anybody has theirs personal to share, or if you're stuck.
And I also just want to add, sometimes it's, as you said, sometimes it's those forward folds. Sometimes it's just like getting the mat on the carpet, like, and just like, that's easy. That feels easy. But if you start doing it, and you're gonna talk about that later, but maybe it's not the exact thing, but it's the preparation that kind of gets that ball rolling.
Anyone want to share? You can put it in the chat. This is also getting into personal territory, so I totally get that. Okay, so Gandhi, thank you for sharing. You said just tracking my daily symptoms. That way I know where I stand and my goal stays present in my mind during the day. Love that. Tracking is something that we're going to talk about here in a second too, but it is a very effective tool. Knowing where we are and just having information is so huge. I really love that. Great job breaking it down to that. And some folks with, another one that comes to mind is like fitness goals. I don't personally often talk about like weight loss as a goal necessarily. I'm not a fitness coach, but if you're setting a goal on that, tracking your daily caloric intake could be your goal. Just putting what you eat in an app, period. Not changing anything, just seeing it.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Great. If anybody else would like to share, please do. You can post that in, but I will move forward. So now we've set our timeline. We've figured out how we know we're making success. We've broken it down to that one, daily bite, I'll say, whatever your time block is, that one bite per time block. Next, the big question is, how do we stay on track? Like I said up at the top, if this were really easy, we'd already be there. This is one of those things that we need to structure for ourselves, is accountability and how we're going to make sure that we are getting there. So one of the things that I really like to tap into is knowing ourselves first and foremost. What do we respond best to? One of my favorite authors, Gretchen Rubin, has the Happier podcast, and she has a framework for this that she describes as the 4 tendencies. So I'll steal a little bit from Gretchen and explain that here. But what the 4 tendencies are a description of how folks respond to expectations, both internal and external, and how those either motivate or demotivate that person. So the 4 types that we get into here are, excuse me, we have upholders. Upholders are folks who respond well to internal and external expectations. So if they set a goal for themselves, they're great at structuring and following through on that. They also respond positively to having external responsibilities. So if they have a buddy that's going to check in on them, that's also really helpful for them. Most folks in the world are obligers. Obligers are folks who don't do so great with the internal expectations, but they do respond well to external. So for instance, if I'm an obliger, I'll tell you that up front. If I were trying to make sure that I went to the gym more often and I set that goal for myself, I'm going to need some external structure to make sure I go. I'm going to need to commit to a contract at a gym that's going to cost me a significant amount of money, or I'm going to need a buddy that's going to go with me. So I always show up for those. The next folks would be questioners. Questioners are folks who don't do well with external accountability or expectations, but they do well with internal. So their drive has to come internal. So if they had a buddy that they were going to the gym with in that scenario, that would actually be demotivating for them. They will push against that. It has to come from their own internal logic and drive. And finally, there are rebels. Rebels are really interesting and not super common, but they're folks who respond poorly to both internal and external expectations. That could be you, and that's really cool, and we should talk about that. But what's interesting for rebels is they need to avoid some overstructuring in particular. External, they're going to push against that. They don't need that. They don't want that. Their drive might shift and they need to have that flexibility. So even with their internal structures, they need to be able to put things on hold, move it the way they want. It can be more challenging for these folks to stay on track, but there are still things you can do knowing that that's your tendency. So if any one of those resonated for you, I suggest writing that down, making a note of that. Gretchen has a quiz on her website if you want to dive in and do more on that. I think it's fascinating. But we want to talk about this just so we know what you're going to respond best to in terms of accountability structure. Are you somebody who does really well with that internal drive or does really well with that external drive? Sama says you think you're a rebel. Yes, I love that. Okay. So as we're talking about this, Sama, if anything, you're like, absolutely not. Garbage, please say that. I love it. Because it can be a challenge to create structure within that shift, but it's a good thing to know nonetheless. So thank you. I'm going to guess we have some other obligers on the line. I think like 60% of people end up in that category. But anyway, so we want to talk about what we're talking about effectively today is creating habit change within our world. So the first thing we want to do when we're trying to affect habit change is know what the heck we're doing right now. Straightforward observation. So this kind of goes to what Gandhi was saying a little bit earlier about tracking. We need to have a baseline in order to be able to change from that. So if we're looking at a change in our diet, for instance, knowing what we're eating every day, if we are looking at growing our business, for instance, are we doing, what are we doing currently on a day-to-day basis? What actions are we taking that lead to that? So we're going to start tracking whatever this is. Glenn says, I have to schedule it and be consistent, not miss or skip the appointment. Love that. And one thing we want to do when we are tracking is make sure that what we're taking in is just information. Anything that we write down, anything that we jot to ourselves as we're observing, for instance, like if I'm tracking the growth of my business and I'm looking at what I do every day, if my list comes up blank, 4 out of the 7 days of the week or 6 out of the 7 days of the week, that's just information. We want to avoid interpreting that too much. We want to avoid putting judgment on that. You know, creating those emotional tie-ins with your current reality can actually cause us to build resistance to making that change. We want to take a neutral, even eye, as if we had like stepped out of our own body and we're just observing another person that we really care for doing the thing that they do. So you want to avoid that self-judgment, check in with yourself, see if you're feeling that at all while you're doing this tracking. So we started to track, now we know what we're doing. The next thing you can do to build habit change into your world is pairing and cueing. These help to take the friction out between you and the change that you're trying to make. So I'll give you a couple of examples here. Let's say you're somebody who wanted to do 10 minutes of yoga every day. That's leading to maybe a flexibility goal, a health goal, whatever. Maybe you want to do a split too. So these two ideas can be really, really helpful for you. So cueing, setting up a cue in your world that is going to lead you to do the goal. So let's say you want to do that 10 minutes of yoga. The cue for that could be taking your yoga mat and rolling it out next to your bed. So when I put my feet out of bed in the morning, my feet are hitting a yoga mat first thing, and that is cueing me to do that 10 minutes of stretching before I do anything else. I'm right there, the mat's there. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to get the mat from the closet. I don't have to decide what room am I going to do this in today. It's right there for me. You kind of want to put it a little bit in your way. So you have to go out of your way to avoid doing that. That would be a cueing situation. So if you're tracking, maybe your notebook lives like right on your desk. So the first thing you do before you get to work is that write in that notebook, whatever you need to write. The next thing is pairing. And this is a little bit similar, but making sure that the activity you're doing is tied into something that you already do. So with my yoga example, I'm somebody who has coffee in the morning. I've already admitted to. Maybe my pair is that I start the coffee pot and then I do my yoga. And when I get done with that, I get to have my cup of coffee. So making sure that it's mixed in. How do you already live your life? And where can this fit in a way that it becomes almost unavoidable for you? My cup of coffee example leads me to my next piece, which is rewards. Rewards are really important. Stani said this earlier. Knowing and feeling success along the way is so important to making sure that we continue this drive forward. It can't just be a slog or we're going to stop. So we want to start to be able to see those micro successes and celebrate those. And there are a couple different things that we can do on that front. You can create some ongoing motivators for yourself. Maybe those are small scale things like if I do 3 days in a row, I get to have a nice glass of wine. Maybe you're not somebody who drinks. Maybe you are somebody who gets to take a walk after doing the activity. Like you get to take a nice walk in the evening to wind down. There's a reward that's tied with the doing of the thing. Sometimes it can be a larger reward. Maybe if you're somebody who likes to operate on a 30-day basis, let's use my yoga example. If I consistently do my yoga for 30 days in a row, I get to go buy myself a new mat. Creating some kind of build-in for that is going to be really helpful. Now, you don't want to subvert your goal with your rewards. I will throw that out there. Like, if weight loss is your goal, you don't want to like go binge eat for your reward. Although sweets are very tempting for me. But you do want to create some kind of reward so that you feel that momentum forward. Okay, finally, creating real support in there too. This can be a lot of different things. First of all, accountability partners are great. If you're somebody who responds to external expectations, getting somebody to check in with you or do the activity in tandem with you can be really, really powerful. It doesn't have to be somebody who's going to like take the exact same journey. Like you don't both have to go to the gym together. I know I'm using fitness examples a lot. Your goals don't have to be fitness examples. They're just easy. Your accountability partner could be somebody who's on their own journey and you check in with each other on these metrics you've set. Like we have a weekly call where we say, hey, how'd you do tracking your stuff this week? What happened? Did you do it? Did you not do it? Knowing that you have somebody else who's watching and caring and leading in is so, so, so helpful. This is like Stani and I with our coaching clients. They know they have a call coming up with us. They know they're going to see us and have to tell us what they did or did not do. It can be very motivating. Stani, did you have something?
I just wanted to say it scientifically is proven again, like as like 40% more likelihood that you are going to achieve a goal if you have accountability partner. It's huge. I mean, it's really, really, it's not, I know if somebody is an introvert or doesn't feel comfortable with that idea, that's some motivation to push you out of your comfort zone to find somebody or try to find an accountability partner, because knowing that that's going to move you 40% more towards your goal. It's pretty cool.
I love that. And some other things that can create support. There's some internal structures. If you're not somebody who likes that external, like maybe you're a questioner and you're like, heck no, don't check in on me. Ongoing tracking is really powerful. One of the things you can do, and one of the things I really like to do, is get a whiteboard calendar and X off each day that I do the thing, whatever the thing is. There's a method called don't break the chain, where as you make that X, and you see them adding up day in, day out, next day, it becomes harder and harder and harder to avoid it when you are 70 days into something to say like, maybe I'll just get to it tomorrow. You got that chain that's staring you in the face. The ongoing tracking can also be really helpful just as a passive thing, honestly. If I'm trying to affect change, placing eyes on it is, an observed behavior naturally changes and attunes. So there's lots you can do there. So I'm so curious hearing these ideas around support, rewards, pairing and cues. What stands out for you as like, what resonates instantly as like, oh yeah, that's going to be helpful for me. That one might fit really well for me. And Samba, I see you put a message in the chat. I have a hard time knowing what is a reward, what is procrastination, what is diversion, what is an unnecessary if well-meant chore, and whether or not that extra activity is in fact working toward the goal. Ooh, interesting. So these are great questions. I love them so much. So I think what I read here is, well, I'm curious, do you have anything specific you want to add around that I can speak to perhaps? And if not, I can talk generally. Oh, you are muted right now.
All right, I'm only gonna talk about this because Stani is one of the audience members here, and she being a musician can relate to this. Okay. So let's say that after having practiced my instrument, decide I wish to study composition scores, read off of them, conduct off of them, etc., etc. I do that in the evenings after I'm done practicing. Now, a part of me thinks that is halfway between a chore and halfway between working my overall big goal of being a better musician, which is more or less true. But is it really helping me be better at my instrument? I may be holding myself accountable for just doing the task alone, but am I really improving at it? Or is this an example of something where, because it's music, if you know anything about it, that if you really want to be better at it, you've no choice but to get formal guidance in it? Am I just doing this? It's clear to me I am doing this out of some sort of obligation, but am I also doing it for unnecessary fun and I don't know it? Or am I really doing this to work towards my overall goal of being a better musician? How misguided am I, and how much am I fooling myself?
Well, as a former musician myself, I can relate to all of this, which is why I'm chuckling a little bit. So when you're talking about your overall goal is to be a better musician, right?
Yes, sir, Mr. Patrick.
Okay, so out of curiosity, just to dig in a little bit, what is the sort of daily metric that you've set for yourself? Or not daily, it could be something else.
Oh, now I'm really specific, not just with times and how quick or long I take to do things.
Okay.
I'm specific about the mindset that I go into, not just for doing the activity overall, but also for doing each part of it and how I could react to a different part of that activity. that's how I monitor the potential obstacles that could slow down the activity or the accelerators that could speed it up. I have to do that or else I'll get less things done.
Okay, so what I love here, Samba, is what I hear is a very multifaceted goal, right? The idea of being a better musician could mean a lot of different things. And this is, I'm sure there are other folks in this room right now who can relate that there are a lot of pieces that tie in. What I would pose as a question to your initial question is, why are you doing the other things? If they are to contribute to the big goal, what is their purpose tying into that? So this might be a situation where you have a couple smaller things that are building in that can have the same structure. Why are you doing it? And I think it's a reasonable thing to interrogate. Is it actually contributing? Or if not right now, can you shift it in a way that you see that meaningful connection, that you feel that meaningful outcome, that score study and conducting is going to lead you to feeling more holistically sound in your other daily pieces. So if your daily metric was practice, I'm going to say 4 hours, well, don't know your life. If 4 hours a day is like the goal, that's a big goal. How does that other action fit into it? You asked about rewards too, and I think they can be a little bit tricky. I don't think rewards have to tie into the goal. I think rewards can actually be a nice reprieve and step away. So maybe like if you enjoy that score study, you can just do it for enjoyment. That is a valid thing to do. You could take a score that you really love and just dive into it for fun. Stani, any thoughts you want to add in?
Yeah, I'm thinking, and you would know if it's a distraction if your main goal, if you want to practice more, you're thinking, yeah, I have to do like 2 or 3 hours a day, whatever it is, and you're not getting that done, yet you're spending more time score reading and listening with a score or conducting. That's one thing to just, again, not be judgmental about it. It's like, oh, I'm noticing I'm practicing less than I wish, yet I find time to do that thing. Well, that's a moment to think, well, do I really want to focus and kind of change my goals to like, maybe I want to start auditioning for small groups to conduct, or maybe I want to like take a program for conducting. Is that that really excites me? Do I want to change priorities and shift priorities and not be hard on myself for not practicing because I really do want to spend more time and grow in this other area? So that's just great information for you to see and to evaluate. Does that help?
I think I do have an answer for myself to my earlier concern by now. I think this is one of those moments where I have to get in obliger and questioner mode both instead of rebel self-centered mode. And this is based off where I am at in my growth and development as a musician and as a cellist in general. I play cello as my main instrument, as Stani has long known.
Well, and I love that idea of shifting. So this is like your natural tendency, and we can shift those over time. Like I would recommend experimenting a little bit with this, Sama, and maybe, you know, if you're like a true rebel, this is a perfect thing for you. Test it and see. Set that internal motivation. Do the break the chain. See if you like it or hate it. Just check in with yourself. Ask a friend to check in with you. And if you find every meeting you're like, ugh, why am I talking to this person? You know, whatever it ends up being, just check in with yourself. It's all about experimentation when we get into this too. So if something's working, roll with it. If something's not working, don't roll with it. Change it if it changes over time. You might need that flexibility.
I love that, and that playfulness, because so often what we do, for example,
ask a friend to check in with me, you say.
Yes, indeed.
And just to wrap up something what's coming up, so often, and this is something all of you here in the group can relate to, often the default is we see something and say, oh, I'm not getting those minutes of exercise, I'm not practicing, I'm not eating this the way I said I was gonna, I promised myself I'm gonna eat, and then we start feeling bad about it. That's when a big block happens, and of course you don't want to go towards that again. You kind of either start to kind of isolate from it, or you stop, or you just quit on the goal. But if you're, again, is what Patrick is suggesting and what we talk about, if you just take this as information and reassess, reevaluate either your goal or how you want to approach it without that additional weight of self-judgment and beating yourself up, which is, again, a huge pitfall. So we see it in our clients constantly. They give up because it feels bad, because you're really beating yourself up every time you think about that goal and you just quit. So that's really common. So just evaluating everything as information and reassessing and seeing what feels more exciting, what feels more important, and just kind of doing that from like a place of kind of kindness and compassion.
I'm going to quote you on that, Stani: kindness and compassion.
It's always important.
Very, very key.
And yes, I already, funny you should mention getting an accountability partner, Mr. Patrick. I did just that yesterday without even knowing what this class was going to be about.
Look at you go. That's a gold star and you didn't even know you had it yet. That's killer. I love it. All right.
And yes, Stani, it was audition related, and it is.
Fabulous. That'll be really good to test and see how you respond on that front. Yeah. So I'm curious to hear. You'll have to let us know if the accountability partner helps. And for everyone in here too, if you haven't tried one of these before, maybe try it. See if it's a new thing for you. Like I'm not inherently somebody who structures rewards for myself, for instance. Maybe it can be motivating if I know that I have that thing. I can just throw that carrot out there for myself and be like, great, if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. Maybe I'll really like it or not. Does anybody else have anything that they sort of discovered? I see Terry said rewards don't work for me. So I'm kind of with you, Terry. I love that you have your daughters there as support. I think that's really cool. Knowing sort of what you respond to is the whole name of the game here. Great.
And I love that this whole process is really creative. It's really you creating your goals, you creating your trajectory, your motivation. It's really based from the inside out, not from the outside in. That so often tends to be the case.
Awesome. If anybody else would like to share, please put it in the chat. Would love to hear. But jumping forward, one of the other things, we created those milestones. One other thing we want to do for our accountability is to create some regular check-in points. You're going to learn a lot as you're getting started with this. And like Stani said, we're taking it as information. We're taking it as neutral. We want to have a little bit of playful external observation with this. I like to put an appointment in my calendar again with myself. I'll do it at the end of each week. It's like a Sunday evening. I will check in and be like, how'd we do this week? You want to keep doing that on a regular basis because it keeps you present in the goal. It keeps you checking in, and it gives you an idea of like, is this working? Is this not working? Do I need to readjust or reevaluate? Like I said, you're going to learn a lot. Maybe once you get going, this goal isn't it. That could be. That could very well be a part of the possibility. Maybe something else comes in. The other thing it does for you is creates an opportunity for acknowledgement of your progress. And that's really important to do. We talked about rewards being as a celebration point. That celebration internally and acknowledgement of where you started, the progress you've made, the things you've learned, the things you've done. Taking a moment to recognize that with yourself, maybe with your accountability partner, and just pat yourself on the back is really important. One of the things, and I'll speak for myself, but Stani, I'm sure you feel this too, is when we're coaching somebody, that external validation can be really huge. Hearing it from your accountability partner or your coach or whomever, saying you're doing it, you're doing a great job, keep going, can be very motivating for you too. So we've talked about creating some structures around that goal. These can shift over time. Once we get out of here today, the rubber hits the road, right? We've done these exercises, we've written it down. So we're going to talk now about the possible why nots that might happen with your goal. There's going to be resistance that shows up. And, we've spoken a lot about the practical breakdown of this in this hypothetical bubble that we're in right now. But once we get out there, we're going to find that friction. It's really important that we acknowledge up front that that friction is going to be there. We know there are going to be bumps along the way. So that prepares us when we get one of them, it's going to be okay. Like there are tools to get around it. So some of the new information is going to lead us to discover new challenges, but there are some that are kind of known and kind of common. I bet you can relate to these two. The first one being kind of two sides of the same coin, but inaction and overwhelm are very, very common things that happen with goals. And this can come with new information. Maybe that bite-sized thing that we set every day was super ambitious. If it's like, I'm going to send 5 text messages a day about my business to friends, and you're finding that you can't hit that on a single day and it's stressing you out, and like you get overwhelmed by the structures you've created and it's forcing inaction, that's a great time to reevaluate. You want to go back to the exercises that we've done today, scale down that goal and put it in a place where you can start to have that bite-sized success. Once you start having those smaller bites, maybe you can ramp it up over time. If texting one person a day is the right thing, great. For me, when I was building my business initially, I had to put the bar on the floor. I was working a full-time job. I had a lot of life things going on. So my daily action was literally anything. Take one daily action toward building my business. I could listen to a podcast. I could watch a video. I could text somebody, whatever it was, one thing. So when you feel or notice that inaction or that overwhelm, that's a great time to reevaluate the structures, reevaluate the goal, and narrow it down. Next, shifting priorities. Like I said, you might get into this and discover that the thing you thought was the right goal is not actually the right goal right now anymore. And that's okay. That's another great time to pause and say, okay, my life priorities have shifted. It has to be this now for whatever reason. Maybe, we've talked about some health things. Maybe a new health thing has cropped up in your world, and sorry, the thing you thought you were doing can't be the thing anymore. Now this has to be the thing because that thing will enable that again. That's okay. Life happens, life intervenes. When you notice that happens, it's a chance to recalibrate and come back to this big list. Maybe start from the very beginning today. Write your list out again. What's new? What's on there? What's number 1? And retune into that. You can also pretty easily lose the why. If you get into this daily progress of doing the thing, sometimes we lose focus on the big picture. I hope for you all, when you were doing that visualization with Stani earlier, you felt some of that like warm energy coming up, like, oh yeah, if I hit that big goal, here's what I'm going to feel, here's what I'm going to do. Tapping back into that can be really powerful. Why are you doing this again? Coming back to the big picture. If you're a small detail person, zooming out can really get you back in. And finally, there can be a fear of failure element here that holds people back. And I think that's really important for us to touch on too. Like we said, there are going to be bumps in the road. Opening ourselves up to knowing that those bumps are there in the first place can keep us from abandoning ship whenever we hit that first wave, so to speak. Embracing ourselves and knowing that we aren't going to do this perfectly, that we are human, that we are fallible, that it could be as simple as we forget one day. That's okay. If you slip, know that you can get back on. If you don't hit it today, tomorrow's the next day. If you get halfway through and then fall off the wagon, you can get right back on the wagon. The wagon hasn't left yet. There's always an opportunity to re-engage with this. So we want to be careful about overviewing any kind of slip with self-judgment, diving too hard in on that failure and ruminating there. That can put the brakes on us altogether. We want to have a little bit of self-compassion. Again, we are humans, but there's a lot that can come down the road for us as we're trying to hit these goals. I'm curious for everyone, is there anything coming up for you that you're concerned about with your goal in particular? Does anything seem like a roadblock that right up front could get in the way? Put it in the chat or not.
It's easy to just share. You can unmute yourself and share.
So Samba says, what is interesting about this accountability partnership is that this partner is a much better and more highly educated cellist than I am, but we're playing the same repertoire, yet we get along well enough for this to work out. Both of us have also played this audition repertoire repeatedly. Interesting. I love that. And then he says, yes, one career roadblock with 3 very important people. Ooh, interesting. It sounds like there's a lot to explore here.
Yes, thanks for sharing. Lisa says, inaction can be a bump. Some fear of failure too. Great clarity.
It's very easy to get bogged down in not hitting things the way you wanted. That playfulness of like, okay, we learned something. We can shift the goal. We can shift the benchmark. That's very important to carry in.
Yes, and Lizzie, especially when we find ourselves in in action, it's so important how we treat ourselves and how we talk to ourselves. Again, not beating yourself up, but just noticing it. It was like, okay, I notice I'm not taking action. Am I still excited about this? Just, is it really important for me? Or yeah, and just kind of reevaluate it without judgment can be huge, because that's that judgment that keeps you even more. It's kind of like, it's a vicious cycle. It's going to keep you even more in inaction because of that judgment that you're putting on yourself as you're observing. And again, seeing, like, we're evaluating, maybe how can you do this differently? What is it? Maybe is there different actions? Is there something that's more fun and kind of a different, more fun action that you can take? It's just all good information to observe. Thanks for sharing, Liz. If anyone wants to share it in the chat, or if it's easier to just speak.
Canty says, there are things that I can do to help or make things better, but ultimately my body is in control. I love that mindset. That's really brilliant. Yeah, I need to tap into. Yeah, sometimes there are things that are literally beyond our control that are coming into play, and how we frame them and interact with them is really important along this way. You know, one of the things that comes to mind too is sometimes in this process, when we're, you know, hopping back in and restarting on something, it's important to know that we still learn something in the process of that. If you've ever read Marie Kondo's The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, such an interesting book. One of the things that Marie talks about with gifts is that people have a hard time giving them away. Somebody gave me this gift, but in parting with that, there is a lesson to be learned. Sometimes you learned you didn't want that sweater in the first place, and you learned something, and that's what you're taking away from it. You can appreciate that for what it is. You might start down this path. Let's say you're trying to grow a business, and you told yourself you're going to put out a blog post every week, and you do that for a little while, and it suddenly becomes such a like slog to get through. You might learn that that's not your method, that that's not the way you want to do this, that that's not your path to doing this. That's also super valid in the process.
Absolutely. Samba says, I have learned that confronting my fear sometimes has crappy consequences.
Sorry, I chuckle, Samba, because one of the things I love to say is that growing and changing is horrible and awful, and we all have to do it all the time. It's changing. Yeah, changing can bring a lot of friction into our world, and having that sort of loving mindset to yourself, treating yourself kindly when you're getting into those things, when it's hard, when you don't want to do it, is really important.
Absolutely. Well said. So if there are no other things you want to share right now about bumps, resistance that's coming up right now. So just kind of want to summarize, we've found the goal that's most important. We figure out why it's most important for you. We kind of traveled in time, saw how it pans out in real life, how it feels. And again, you get to check in with that goal and see if it really is what it's most important based on how it makes you feel, whether it makes that impact that you want in your life. If not, you can go back through some of these and kind of do it again on your own and think, like, actually, I want to find out if that other goal might be more important. How does that make me feel? And we've figured out all these wonderful techniques, ways to kind of make it actionable. We've figured out what the resistance might be and how to move past it. And through all of this, I just want to reemphasize, it's really how we're being with ourselves throughout our goals. And this is something Patrick and I do with our clients all the time. That's what we find most resistance is usually with yourself, the way you talk to yourself, the way you treat yourself as you are going forward with a goal is really what makes it likely if it's going to happen or not. The more you beat yourself up and go from a place of willing through something, again, it's scientifically proven you cannot achieve anything long-term. You can make a long-term change in your life just through pure will and through just pushing through it. It has to be done through self-compassion. This is pure scientifically proven. To make a long-lasting change in your life, it has to come from self-love and self-compassion. So the more you can just add this in your day and being kind to yourself and just seeing what's coming up as information and giving yourself the grace and kindness to just try again tomorrow, the more likely you are actually going to achieve it. It's not always going to feel like, oh, I'm doing it. I'm every day. I'm doing that. I'm so ambitious. I'm so strong. It's not going to feel like that every day. A lot of days probably it's not going to feel that way. But in those moments, if you can stay with yourself kindly and be like, I'm good. That's not everything. I'm going to try again tomorrow. Having that mindset is huge. Yeah, so I just want to again take a moment to thank you all for having been here. And I want to open it up for some question and answers. It could be something more specific, something that would help you from everything we've done today. Any specific questions that will help you take action tomorrow, that will help you or move you closer to your goal starting tomorrow.
So Samba, I see your hand up. Go for it if you want to unmute.
Yes, question for you, Stani. You having played in so many different music ensembles, small and large, for over 30 years. I would like to know if auditioning regularly for different chamber ensembles has been a thing in your life.
Not really, to be honest. Never. I never found, especially coming out of school, I never found an ensemble that excited me, that I wanted to be part of. I didn't see my career as belonging to one particular ensemble. What I saw my career as was always doing a lot of different things and creating my own thing. So that's why I created my own chamber music series, because I didn't see the thing I wanted to do, so I created it.
Okay, so you were a creator early on.
That's where my gut led me. Like, that's what I envisioned and I went for it. It wasn't safe. It wasn't, I didn't know what's going to happen, but I had to do it because that's what my creative vision took me, and I just kind of leaned into it.
But you did audition a lot of people yourself, didn't you?
I take people who I already know, who I've played with. But it depends on your goals, depends what you want. And absolutely, audition, it's great practice to just do a lot of auditions. You need to know why, the end goal. Auditioning in itself can be a practice because it prepares your mindset, prepares you physically, prepares you and gets you in the habit of having 5 minutes where you just play your top bests and you show up like what you can do in 5 minutes. And having that mindset and training yourself for that is very beneficial. Depending if you really want to get a job in an ensemble, then that's a great thing to do a lot of, because even like the best players I know, they've taken 20, 30, 40, 50 auditions until they got the dream job. So it just takes persistence. If that's what you want, then that's the practice of getting it.
Yes, I asked because in a lot of groups, both where you, Stani, are at and where I'm at, if they want to add any one member to a rotating list, in these cases, they audition you, whether it's for the studio and theater gigs, everything. They all audition you whenever they get the chance. And while I can't really fix my past personal mistakes with they who I typed about earlier, I can still do that for any ensemble I want as a musician by upping my presentability. Like you said, Stani, the audition, along with being the interview, is the way one knows where one stands with something, whether or not one really wants it.
Absolutely, yeah. You take it as every audition is information for you, how you showed up and seeing how you want to show up next time, and information from the other side, what they thought. Again, it's not good or bad. It's just information that helps you for the next time, as long as you want to keep showing up, and that's important for you. Great question.
If I may add one thing in, because I think this is a great example, Samba, that other folks may experience too. One important thing to do with framing your goals is to make sure you put it in a place where you have control over certain elements. You don't have control over whether or not you get selected out of an audition. You could play your absolute best in, best of your life in 5 auditions, and they only take you in 1 out of the 5. You don't have control over what they want. And this could be true for many goals. We don't want to place the control mechanism or the outcome in somebody else's hand. So what we may want to shift a goal to be is something we can control. So taking the audition is something that would be in your control. Showing up could be the metric of success that you're making, playing that audition. And then, like Stani said, everything afterwards, just information. The outcome has a little bit to do with how you did. Also, it has a lot to do with whoever was on that audition committee, whatever they were particularly looking for. it's a little bit outside of your realm. So an important thing to consider, I think, for all of us is making sure that we aren't relying on the whims of fate when we're setting a goal, that it's actually something we can act upon. That was a really good question. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Any other questions?
I appreciate y'all's inputs. And also, as long as I'm not blacklisted.
You know, it's funny, just to speak to that a little bit too, because this is what you were alluding to earlier in the chat. Relationship development can be an aspect too for a goal. I work with my corporate clients all the time. Maybe they made an impression that they didn't feel was ideal with a supervisor that is now somewhat in control of their fate moving up within the organization. It's important to know that those can be shifted. If there is a behavior that you are aware of in the past that was creating that situation, understanding that behavior, shifting that behavior, and then acting in that shift will over time change the relationship. It's not going to be an instant thing. You can't make somebody like you, but you can demonstrate growth. You can demonstrate a shift and a new approach, and trust that over time, if you're taking those actions, it will make that momentum with those people too.
I agree that that genuine repentance, especially in the professional worlds, is a should have life skill. I'm glad you brought that up. And yes, I have already started working towards that too, for me to even say that. And now I met with Stani via video chats a year and 2 years ago. And back then I still wasn't so sure if I was ever gonna get rid of those habits and ways of being that were holding me back with different people. I finally made a decision and even gained the confidence that I have at long last abolished a lot of those things as of this month.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Congratulations.
Acknowledge you for that song, but that's terrific. And I love what Patrick said about relationships. Like often we think it's, and for anyone who has relationship goals or even in the work environment, so nice that thinking that you can be vulnerable and show that you want to change that dynamic and show up as just like, you know, I see what I fell through. Like, I really actually want this, like, I want to show up differently. I wasn't my best. Just being vulnerable and just showing that you do really want to work on a relationship, even if it's in a work environment. So it can be so wonderful, a wonderful place to start. Thank you, Patrick, for sharing that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up, Samba. Really great, multifaceted question.
Wonderful.
Welcome. I appreciate your diverse background as well.
Anybody else?
If anyone wants to kind of walk through any possible bumps, resistance, that might be helpful to just kind of walk through. What do you think that would be helpful for us to support you with?
Oh, and if you're completely lost, I'd love to hear that. That'd be so fun. We could talk about it right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can take on anything.
And also I'm curious, just this whole experience, if you're finding something particularly helpful or one particular part more helpful than another. And that's something for you to observe as well, if you want to share that as well. Is there anything, did you have any breakthroughs? Is there anything that surprised you both in like with visualizing going in your head, or as you going and narrowing down the goal and the steps? Is there something that's surprising you that you didn't expect diving into? So kind of really zooming into the goal. And most importantly, do you feel like the likelihood of you taking those little steps is going up as you're seeing, as you're going through this process? Is it becoming more real, more actionable? Okay, someone was asking, does anyone here write their daily goals and schedules on a daily basis? I can share for myself, I have my own daily to-do lists. It's very simple, and it goes like in order of priority again, what's most important, what has to get done today, and things that are personally important for me. even if they don't seem urgent to the outside world, or something is urgent for me for my priorities, I put that on the list as number one. And also, again, tuning how I want to feel. What's going to make that day at the end of the day make me like excited and just happy, like enjoy, and kind of happy with myself. And yeah.
Can I throw one thing in there, Stani? I'm a to-do list person as well, mainly because I have too much going on in my mind at any given time. So I love a brain dump, but I play a little game with myself, kind of like we did here. I try to pick one thing that's going to make that day a success. Like if I only got one thing done, because my job and the things that I do, a lot can get thrown at me and that full to-do list is never going to get done. So I pick one thing and I try to do that thing first. I try to knock that thing out first thing in the day. And then if I get anything else done on the list, gravy, it's wonderful. So you can do that however fits you best. I'd be careful about overdoing a to-do list. Sometimes that can create the overwhelm effect.
Yes.
So definitely prioritize.
Absolutely.
And Gandhi, did I see that you unmuted there for a sec?
And Terry shares.
That I was kind of going to talk about that. Like, I guess my main problem is getting overwhelmed. Like, you know, like my list of goals is that big, and it's great. I picked one and worked on it, but these are all things that I have to do too. So how do I not get overwhelmed with doing all of them or trying to do all of them?
Mind if I take a swing, Stani? Gandhi, that's such a good question. I feel like we're very similar in this way. Like lots of long goals, lots of to-dos. And you're right, the goals list, some of them are have to do's, right? They're not necessarily optional, they need to fit in. What we tapped into today is a long arc goal, most likely, something that's sort of bigger, overarching, that's going to contribute to the smaller things in and of themselves. So finding that first is really looking for a capacity build. I'll give an example of one. So actually, when I did this exercise, I was my own rebel and picked two and went through it because I just literally couldn't decide. And one of them was a business building one, and one of them was sleep. One of them was like legitimately get 7 hours of sleep a night because my sleep schedule is a nightmare. And I want to sleep more. I feel the eyes of my mom as I say that. One of those is going to help me do the other, right? The sleep is going to build that one, but the goal that I really want to tap into is the business one. So you can have things operating in tandem. You can build these things to go together. So when I do my don't break the chain, I actually have it in this notebook here. I have like 3 columns of things that I want to do every day, and I put an X for each one. You can do that, but that's really a know yourself. Don't put too much on your daily plate sort of thing. The other thing you could do is take that list and rank order these. With that same philosophy in mind. If I do number 3, it's going to make number 5, 6, 7 way easier. So it may be sorting. It sounded like you categorized them already too, which is really helpful, because then within the category, you can make an order of operations. That may be another way to approach this too. For you, Gandhi, with overwhelm, what sort of is your MO when that happens?
I get overwhelmed and don't want to do anything. So inaction.
Okay, just a full stop.
Or procrastination. Like,
completely legit. I mean, that's again kind of how I operate. My suggestion here, I think, this could be more overwhelming or not, would be with those frequent check-ins too. Just being able to sort of neutrally observe, having those artificial touch points to say, is this working? Not did I do good or bad, but is this working for me? Is going to be a really helpful framing. So like going back to the drawing board, maybe you have to do it every 3 days. You have an after dinner check-in with yourself. Is this working for me right now? And then reframe and refresh to sort through the piles. Folks with a lot on their mental plate can get that a lot. A lot of goals can get sorted. So you may have to do some sorting quite a bit. Ooh, And Terry threw this in. There's a fun productivity exercise called Do, Delegate, Delete, or Defer. Google it. I found it that is as a helpful planning tool. Yeah, Terry, that's so fun. Really good to sort through those long lists too. So if you're a brain dump person, absolutely.
Absolutely. And can I chime in, Patrick?
Yeah, please.
Just thinking, Gandhi, also thinking as you go through the list, I wonder if you go through and how many of these are shoulds, like of these goals, how many are things that are externally shoulds, external goals, and how many of these are wants? How many of these things are things you want to do? And I wonder if you prioritize the ones that you want to do first, how would that feel? Even that idea, how does it resonate?
It would be nice, but some of the things on the should list, if I don't do them, there's going to be, you know, consequences, and
Absolutely.
like they're kind of have tos.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And kind of, well, finding a balance between always having some of your wants done a day, maybe pick one and one should a day. Again, narrow it down, but make sure that you're taking care of first. Again, because no one can drink from an empty cup. Like you doing the shoulds will depend on how well you do the shoulds if you've taken care of the wants.
yeah, and I've kind of been doing that a little bit lately. Like, okay, there's these things that I have to do, and then I'm going to get to do this one thing that I want to do, instead of just doing all shoulds all day. And that just helps.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's super important. A balanced diet, so to speak. It can't just be hard work all the time. We have to build in those things like rewards. We mentioned as a tool that can be used in there. But heck, I actually really like the wording that you use too. I get to do is an exciting framing to take things to. Not I have to, but I get to, or I am choosing to, is a really powerful mental reframe on these things too. Choosing to puts power and ownership in your hands in a lot of ways too. So even if it's a slog, you can be like, I am choosing to do this because it's getting me there.
And that's Patrick, that's amazing. You said that this has been so helpful in the last month. It's been like personally incredibly busy, but every time I find myself overwhelmed, I kind of see even work that are, you know, external responsibilities. And I really just sit down and say, wait a minute, I get to do this. I get to show up and have a work to show up to. I get to meet with colleagues, and I get to play music, or I get to work with clients. And sometimes just that, even saying it kind of NLP thing, like it really helps trigger different neurons in your brain and like turns excitement on. All of a sudden you're really telling yourself, I'm lucky to get to do this. And it's things like that really help to kind of reframe things that normally feel like a slog.
Sorry, I'm just going back into the chat too. Lizzie said, I like the idea of consistent rewards. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, it's really interesting to play with, Lizzie. I'm the same way. I don't think about rewards, but sometimes putting those in and getting creative about them can be really powerful. One thing Gretchen Rubin talks about a lot is the power of beautiful tools. So like I gave the yoga mat example. If I did yoga for 30 days, I get a nice yoga mat. She'll do that with her goals too, where, you know, if she does X, Y, and Z, she'll buy herself a new professional notebook to have, just like a beautiful thing that encourages the ongoing activity. Can be really fun there too. And also you said, I can't have too much structure. So breaking the goal down and figuring out an internal reward system, I think will help because I procrastinate. So an accountability buddy or external check-in just leads me to say I haven't done it to them instead. Yeah, there are so many things that you can play with here. It sounds like the internal might be really powerful for you. Is that the case, do you think? Okay. If you are at all like a don't break the chain person, I'm not an internal accountability person. I can break goals with myself all day. But for some reason, having that calendar stare me down really will like kick me to do the thing. Even if I'm lying in bed and I see that empty spot, I'm like, gosh darn it, I'm gonna send that text. I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna lose. Maybe I'm just competitive, but however that hits for you, that might be really powerful too. I want to see more too. And then, of course, and then Samba says, What then is considered overdoing the list other than writing too many things to do? Instead of writing a lot of things to do during the day, I get hyper specific and break down-ish about what I do within each thing to do. That's really interesting, Sama. Yeah, you mentioned that before, you get really specific. I think this might not be you, but this could be somebody else. So I'm just going to speak to this kind of generally, and then if I'm wrong, you can tell me. Sometimes folks will get so in the weeds with specificity or with preparation and planning, it actually can keep them from action too. Sometimes there is a little bit of a trick of just doing it, just making it happen, just doing something for the sake of doing, not for the sake of perfection. And I can give a personal example here. Posting things on social media pertaining to coaching has always stressed me the heck out. So I had made a goal to literally just barrel on through and post something. So if anybody's seen my goofy Instagram videos, that's literally me just doing something so that I did the thing. Stani, any thoughts on there?
Yeah, again, our brain is like really tricky. It's actually anytime you find yourself bogged down into specificities and kind of like it's your brain really, your fear of actually doing the thing keeping you in action. It's often because it feels easier to kind of either like write down a lot of things or just like for example, website. Let's say you need a new website and you're getting bogged down in the details and you're not actually like practicing or not going auditioning because think, oh well, people are not gonna like it. Like that's things like that we get bogged down into little details and scheduling in more and more into the nitty gritty. Often we are running away from taking the scary action. So that's something for you to observe and thinking, what feels a little challenging, like in Patrick's example, like he can plan all he wants, but it's that he has to post, if that's his thing, right? So thinking, okay, I'm planning a lot, but like, am I really doing the action? And again, if the action feels too big and scary, like what's a small version of that? Maybe it's not like a video or like maybe it's just one sentence, or maybe it's quoting somebody else, or maybe reposting something. So just what's the smaller version of the action that seems scary?
One of my favorite phrases is don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. Sometimes just getting out there is the most important thing that you can possibly do, getting the action done rather than getting it done perfectly. It's also a good opportunity to check in with any judgments that are rising up too, or fears that are rising up too. This can be great to talk about with another person. Like, if I'm scared of posting, why am I scared of posting? It can be a really interesting thing to explore about why we're getting held up too.
Yeah. And oftentimes perfectionism is just fear. Yes, it's just the fear, how we're showing up, and it's keeping us safe and it's keeping us from taking action. That's a good thing to remember.
Ooh, interesting, Samba. I get specific out of a perceived necessity. If I just do things, I will do them quite poorly, like a donkey. Interesting. I would challenge that a little bit. I think on the face of it, I wonder if there is a little bit of that in there of like seeking the perfect to the detriment of getting the good, you know? Like, is that really true that you're doing poorly, or are you brand new at something and it's your first day and you're learning it? Can you be a little kinder with somebody who is just getting started with something, that someone being yourself?
And again, I see that evaluation, I'm doing them quite poorly. I would challenge that too, and like thinking, well, what happened there? Like, what did I learn from this? I showed up, I took the action. What did I learn? Just ask that question, take notes, and do it again. Yes, that's so common, Gandhi. Thanks for sharing. Wanting to do it perfectly the first time, from the first time.
And sometimes versus, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's so much of that is again what we talked about, which is at the core of really showing up and doing the thing you really want to do, is having the compassion to be like, you know what, it's not going to be perfect. I'm just going to show up and I'm learning in the process. Having that kindness to yourself and that alone takes practice as well. What happens if I really let go of the idea that it has to be perfect and I make it okay that it's going to be what it is, and that it's the action, my body, my mind going, the action of the thing is what's moving me forward, not so much how it's going to be. Because however it comes out, I can learn from that. That the lesson that I take away is the value that's going to propel me forward. It's the learning from being in action, that you can't learn from a static place, that you only learn in action. Your body, your muscles, your mind, only when it sees you in action.
So just to acknowledge, we're coming up on the end of our 2-hour range that we spitballed. Happy to stick around and answer any questions that folks may have, but if anybody does need to hop off at this point, I want to just say thank you so much for coming and being here today. Thanks for participating in these exercises. Again, I want to acknowledge all of you for doing this for yourself, for showing up here today to make that space for your goals. Hopefully this was clarifying. Maybe this was energizing for you. Maybe you're ready to go out there and just start knocking it out of the park today. I hope that's the case. One of the things that we said is once you get out there in the real world, it is different than sitting down and writing it out. Things are going to happen. You're going to learn stuff. Know that there's going to be a path along the way. One of the things that Stani and I want to do is offer some support along that journey too. So for folks who are here today and folks who are watching this, we're going to, in 2 weeks, offer you a check-in with us. So an opportunity to hop back in here and talk about how it's gone and get some real feedback and real help for what's going on for you. So on the 30th, we're going to be offering just another 2-hour block where you get an opportunity to be in the spotlight and get some real help once you've started to implement these goals.
In a way, it's kind of laser coaching, that we get to answer your questions and help you move forward with your goals. Once you've been trying it for 2 weeks, you get to see what's working, what's not working, and any specific question we will be here to answer and support you with.
So we'll send a follow-up to you after this with the recording and with the link that we'll be using for that. So you'll have that invite.
And we hope you all can join us then. And again, I want to thank you all for being here. It's been wonderful to meet so many of you and see familiar faces. And again, acknowledge you for your willingness to try this, to really go there, and for your vulnerability to really go deeper into your goals and what's most important for you. So I wish everyone a wonderful weekend. I really hope to see you in 2 weeks. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you,
Wonderful doing this
Stani.
with you.
And I see we have one more question. We'll go ahead and we'll stop the recording here. If anybody needs to hop, that'd be great. Stani, I think you have control on that. Okay,
Yep.
perfect.